It's clearly the biggest news on the planet. Now, the wonderment is, are we apprehensive? Are we jubilant? Are we expectant? What do we think is going to happen in the Middle East now? Because I'm 59 years old, and my entire life there's been unrest in the Middle East. Is this really the start of an era of peace? Let's check in with Ruthie Blum, of course, from JNS TV. What is it called? Undiplomatic is the show that you're on, Ruthie?
Israel Undiplomatic. That's
I love it.
On JNS TV. Yes.
It's so good to see you. I appreciate you staying up late for me. I was up very late into the early morning hours, watching President Trump land, watching Netanyahu come up and greet him, watch him go and sign some things. It was really quite the event. What is the feeling there? Is it jubilant? Is it apprehensive? How do you feel right now? How does Israel feel right now?
All of the above. First of all, you may be tired, but I've been up since yesterday. And I'm all puffy because I have been talking and weeping for the last 48 hours.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you this, you look great, and you look like you're about half my age. So go ahead. When did the jubilant start? Was it when the hostages actually were released? Because, again, we were very apprehensive. Are they really going to release them? Are we going to see some people alive? Do we get the 20 back? Do we get the bodies back? I mean, was that what it was, the first 7, and you went, holy mackerel, this is really happening?
Even before that.
Okay.
Even before that, because I was at Hostage Square before that.
Okay.
Sort of broadcasting live from Hostage Square, where people were gathering. Some spent the night there to wait for the actual release. Okay.
Right.
But the very fact that both Trump and Netanyahu said definitely 20 live hostages are coming home, I think everybody believed them this time. And so there was just joy. People were happy at Hostage Square. Now, the families of those who had been killed on October 7th,
Yes.
and those whose bodies were still in Gaza, they were not jubilant. They were miserable.
Yes.
Many said they hate to admit it, and that though they're very happy that their friends and colleagues, children are coming home, or husbands, etc.
Right.
They felt envious because they knew all these 2 years they've been a kind of group where they were fighting for the same thing.
Right.
And now a lot are coming home, and their own loved ones are never going to come home. And they were feeling sad and envious, which you can understand.
Obviously, yes.
But they are also angry right now because only 4 dead bodies came back today, and there are 24 more. And Hamas said, well, we're having trouble finding them. It's Hamas. They're monsters and a terrorist organization. So, and they lie. And today they spread false rumors. They pulled stunts till the very last minute. They spread a false rumor that the Red Cross had visited the hostages, and many of them were in critical condition. That's just one example of a fake news story that Hamas spread.
Well, let me stop you there because it's important to expand upon that. We've been getting the numbers of dead in Gaza from the freaking Hamas health ministry or some crap. And I don't trust them as far as I can throw them either. Do we have any idea how many Hamas fighters were killed? How many civilians were killed? At one point, they put out a number of dead children that was more than the population of the dead children. So that didn't make any sense. Do we have any real numbers? Can we ever find out exactly what the casualty count is and how decimated Hamas was because of this?
Well, I don't know if Israel can ever find out, but I can tell you something. Remember COVID. Remember the statistics of COVID.
Yes.
Anybody who died of anything, including falling off a ladder, they said they put them in the statistic of COVID death. That's what the Hamas health ministry does. So when they said children, for example, hundreds of thousands of children died. You could have said that most of those were 16-year-olds with RPG rifles aiming them at IDF soldiers.
Right, we wouldn't know.
It's very, very difficult to know because aside from the fact that, here's another thing that the Hamas health ministry did. It would immediately after any event, many of those events, by the way, were self-perpetrated. A rocket that was aimed at Israel landed inside Gaza, hit a building or a hospital, that kind of thing.
Right.
But let's say, here's the thing, how do we know that they were lying? On October 7th, 1,200 Israelis and foreign nationals were killed in the massacre. all right, from the Nova Music Festival and
Yes.
from people's homes, and there were some soldiers, etc. Now, it took Israel days and days and days and sometimes weeks to give a final tally.
Right.
And the reason was that we take really great care. We had to separate limbs. We had to have forensic exams on all the remains. There was also a lot of sexual violence. That also,
Yes.
I hate to be that graphic for your audience, but I think it's important that we remember what savages these people are.
Yes.
That people's limbs were ripped off. They had hearts taken out. A pregnant woman had her womb, slit open, things like that. Now, because we did serious forensic exams, it took a long time to come to the actual number. Do you know there was even a case where a father and a daughter with cerebral palsy in a wheelchair, and he was at the Nova Festival with this young daughter who was about 13, I think, and he would take her everywhere. It turns out they couldn't find her. So they dug up one of the graves. They discovered that the two of them were buried together.
Oh, wow.
By accident. So there's, in that kind of chaos. So that's how you know that if Hamas says after an incident, 5 minutes later, this many people were killed.
Right.
You want to say to them, really, how did you know? And how do you know who and these many members of the same family. Really? Did you take them for forensic exams?
Well, Ruthie, I think you make an incredible point. Let me say this, because it really just like a light bulb went off over my head. When you said that, Israel could have said, boy, they killed 15,000 that day. It could have said that. Could have said 30,000. Could have said 5,000. In fact, the number went from 1,300 down to around 1,200 because you're giving us real numbers. So that really does show the difference between who is telling the truth and who is using it for propaganda. If you would have said, because I'm here in Texas in the United States, if you would have said 15,000 died, I would have went, holy mackerel, 15,000 died. I wouldn't know. So we're trying to take the word of people that actually did the attack. That's my problem. That's why I wondered if we could ever know. We probably can't know, can we?
We can't, but I will stress again that even in the numbers that are accurate from their side, what they're not telling you is how many women and children were also terrorists,
right?
Or that kind of thing. Now, by the way, another thing is that they since they were using their own population as human shields, it was in their interest for Israel to bomb facilities where there were civilians.
Right.
So even when they were telling the truth, my point was that every single death in Gaza, every Gazan who was killed, it was on Hamas's head for that. Okay.
Right.
Because Israel didn't want this war and didn't start it. And, so, no, we will never really know the numbers. We do know they lie. Listen, if they rape and behead and all that, why wouldn't they lie? Right.
Well, you and I have talked about this for a couple of years now, since the attack. It's Ruthie Blum, by the way. It's BLUM. Go and follow her at Ruthie Blum over on X. She's also the co-host of Israel Undiplomatic on JNS TV. We've been talking about this for a couple of years, and you made it very clear to me that there can be no peace unless Hamas is out of the picture. Hamas appears to not be involved in this. The Palestinian Authority, whatever that is, they're involved somehow. But I like that all 20 signatories are agreeing to some semblance of peace and some rebuilding of Gaza. Is this different than what you've seen before? It seems different to me.
It's totally different, but there is one main reason that it's different. Unlike we've had other accords. Now, the Abraham Accords were great. But part of the reason for October 7th was that Saudi Arabia was probably about to join the Abraham Accords in some fashion.
Right.
Because this was an anti-Iran axis. And part of the reason that Sinwar, the Hamas terrorist we ended up killing, orchestrated October 7th when he did, part of the reason, he had many reasons. One reason was to put, to stop that from happening.
Right.
To stop this, the Abraham Accords from happening and from Saudi Arabia from joining. What is different about this treaty from, let's say, the Oslo Accords and other ceasefire agreements we've had with Hamas is that in this case, Israel, specifically, Prime Minister Netanyahu, Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer, President Donald Trump, his son-in-law Jared Kushner, and his envoy Steve Witkoff,
right,
together wrote this deal up. this
Right.
plan. So contrary to rumors or whatever, accusations that Trump forced Netanyahu. Now, anti-Trump people said he forced Netanyahu into a deal. Anti-Netanyahu people said it too, like Netanyahu was weak and he gave in to Trump. That's a lie. They did this together. And you can tell because the onus is on Hamas.
Right.
And it gives Israel the right and the duty to do whatever it needs to do when Hamas violates any terms of the deal. It leaves Israel in a perimeter in Gaza for its own security. There are many elements to this deal, and then it at a later stage paves the way or the path for some time in some future Palestinian self-rule or something like that.
Right.
Now, that's not going to happen because let me tell you something. It's not just Hamas. The Palestinian Authority, run by Fatah, run by Mahmoud Abbas, who's the head of the Fatah party, which is PLO, funds those gives stipends to terrorists. Now, he's a rival of Hamas, so he wants to take charge. But make no mistake, he's a terrorist and a tie. He funds terrorism. The school books that children in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria, what you call the West Bank, those kids are raised on the same textbooks, that say things like in math class, if you kill 2 Jews and then you kill 3 more Jews, how many total did you kill?
Wow, it's so sick.
So those are the school books, the media, even crossword puzzles have jihadi clues and everything. Sports facilities, entertainment venues are all named after terrorists who were killed or martyrs. They call them martyrs in the act of slaughtering Jews, Christians, and infidel Muslims. By the way, you should know, I don't know if a lot of people know this, Yahya Sinwar, who orchestrated the October 7th massacre.
Right.
He was in Israeli prison. He was freed in what was called the Gilad Shalit deal. He was a hostage, Gilad Shalit, for 5 years in Gaza. Now, Sinwar was one of the 1,000 and something terrorists released from Israeli jails, and he got a brain tumor while he was in prison, and Israel cured him of cancer of his brain tumor. But the reason I want to bring him up is that he was in Israeli prison for slaughtering with his bare hands other Palestinians.
Wow.
Not Jews in this case.
Well, how many just got released now, or how many are going to be released from that are going back to Hamas? What is it, 1,000, something like that?
Well, yeah, there's 1,700. The numbers are kind of wacky. Okay.
How do you keep track of them and stop them from doing it again?
You can't. Well, I'll tell you, that's a good question because they always do it again. The rate of recidivism is really, really high. All right. So 250 with actual blood on their hands are being released. And then another, I think 1,700 who were detained or arrested who did not actively take part in the October 7th massacre, but who were arrested,
right,
perhaps in Gaza or in Israel for arrested and questioned and detained and all that. Now, when I say actual blood on their hands, I don't know if you will remember at the Emmy Awards, there were Hollywood stars wearing a little red pin, and on the pin were hands, bloody hands. Those represented, and I don't know if the people wearing those pins actually knew this, but in the year 2000, 2 Israeli reservists got lost in the car. They were on their way somewhere, I don't know, home or something, and they took a wrong turn. They didn't have Waze then, okay. They took a wrong turn and by mistake ended up in the PA, in Ramallah. They were pulled from their car by angry mobs of Palestinians, dragged into the Palestinian Authority police station. Mind you, according to the Oslo Accords, also Israel armed these people, supposedly because the Palestinian police force was helping Israel. They dragged them into the police station, ripped them limb from limb, and I'm not kidding. I'm not using that as a euphemism. They disemboweled them. They did horrible things to them. then threw one of them out the window. The rest of the mobs were pounding on him. I mean, they were dismembered. Don't even ask. And those two, and then while they were being slaughtered inside the police station, two of the killers had their bloody hands. They put them up outside of the window of the police department like this with the blood, so that all the Palestinians below could cheer and be happy that these are the blood of Jews. And those pins that in Hollywood, you see people wearing those little pins with the two handprints, just so you should know, that's what that was.
They're celebrating the guys they killed, the two that got lost, or they're angry that they killed them. Because listen, Ruthie, you don't know me that well. I don't watch any award show anymore because they all suck. And they're all a bunch of nut jobs. I don't even watch a whole lot of American football anymore because they're all a bunch of idiots. So at the end of the day, I try to avoid that kind of thing. But I have seen the bloody hands. They're celebrating the guys that killed them?
Yes.
It's such a sick thing. It's Ruthie Blum coming to us from Tel Aviv, Israel right now. Israel Undiplomatic on JNS TV. We don't have a ton of time left, but I can talk to you for 2 hours. Let me ask you.
1 second, Joe. Just 1 second.
Please.
One of the guys who put his hands up in that window is being released in this deal.
Wow.
That's why it was important for me to tell you that.
It was important to tell us anyway because I didn't know what the bloody hands represented. Now I know. I appreciate you doing that. Let me ask you something completely off the beaten path, but that really isn't. I've been watching a lot of Golda Meir lately, and I've been watching what she said about, because there are people today in America, especially this guy Dave Smith, this so-called comedian, keeps saying, let's go back to the 67 borders. And when I watched Golda Meir talk about this, it made so much sense. She said, why would we go back to the 67 borders? The 67 borders, if they were so fine, why did you have a war with us? I mean, and once you had that war, as the victors, we took that area. So what do you mean go back to the 67 borders? You had them, just like you had Gaza for almost 20 years. You had self-rule. How did that work out? So if you don't mind, for those who are watching and listening who are confused that all we have to do is go back to the 67 borders and everybody be happy and there'll be these skipping and singing songs in the street, the 67 borders were there until somebody decided to go to war over it.
Also, in Arabic, in all the Palestinian media, today with AI especially, you don't even need to know Arabic. All you got to do is translate it in Chat GPT. But in any case, in all their media, and again, school books, etc., it doesn't say 67 borders. It doesn't say, the settlement. It says, we're going back, we're taking over the entire state of Israel.
Wow.
That they talk about the 48 borders, and they do it without apology.
But when somebody says the 67 borders, I mean, Golda Meir makes such a great point. You had them. Why did you bring a war? You lost. You lost the war. That's what happened. I mean, am I misrepresenting it? That's what happened, right?
No, what happened in the 67 war was, in the 6-Day War, was that all these countries, surrounding countries, armies that were the occupiers of the so-called Palestinians, the ones who call themselves today Palestinians, Egypt occupied, Gaza. Egypt, Jordan occupied the West Bank. Syria occupied the Golan Heights. This was not an Israeli occupation. It never has been.
It's such an interesting thing because Meir also says this, and I know that you know all this. I'm just saying it for my audience. That why do you think they call it the West Bank? Because Jordan is the East Bank. I mean, it used to be all part of Jordan. What the hell happened? Well, you decided to bring war on Israel in 67, and you got your ass kicked. That's what happened. Why would we go back? It would be like saying, let's go back to before Hitler decided to attack all of Europe and decide that the British Empire, the Ottoman Empire, this, that, or the other. No, war has consequences. That's the answer.
Well, absolutely. But also, another note, because this is so complicated and there are so many facets to it, but I would say something since the October 7th war, when all these surrounding countries, including Egypt, with which Israel has a peace treaty, and Jordan, with which Israel has a peace treaty, and everybody else, were saying the poor Palestinians, Israel's committing genocide. It's a lie, of course. Okay. Israel's committing genocide in Gaza. Israel's starving everybody, the women and children, etc., etc. Do you know that Egypt refused to take in a single Gazan? If they're suffering so much, Egypt has the entire Sinai Desert. Egypt blocked its border to the Gazans.
It's a
And
it's a very secure border. And King Hussein came out and said not one Palestinian will come here, right?
Yeah. They say, not in our country. We don't want them. And then they have the nerve to say, first of all, that we're committing, first of all, they lie about us. I mean, Queen Rania of Jordan actually came out to say, and this is a woman, right? To say that nobody had been raped on October 7th.
Wow. We have the video. Yeah. We literally have the video.
Yes, we do. And you know why we have the video? Literally, because Hamas terrorists, the rapists, taped themselves, filmed themselves, and put it on social media.
Yeah, they're proud of it. It is Ruthie Blum. Go check her out, Israel Undiplomatic on JNS TV. I know it's getting late there. Let me just ask you a last couple because I love having you. Going forward, what do you expect to happen in the coming weeks, the coming months, the coming years? How do you see this unfolding?
Oh, that's such a good question. Look, I have to say that President Trump is amazing. And his speech today at the Knesset was incredible.
Yeah.
But what I don't agree with, and we know that Trump speaks in hyperbole, all right? I mean, he has his way of talking.
Yes.
There's never been anything as great as this and that.
Most fantastic, it's the best, yes.
Exactly. Now, it is true, by the way, that he is the best friend in the White House that Israel ever had. That is, we all say that, and we know it, and it's true. But when he says, that's it, no more war, there's peace in the Middle East, and it's peace, 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 there, I have to tell you, that's not true. And I mean, it's very nice that that's his fantasy, but you have to de-radicalize the jihadists before there can be peace in the Middle East. And it's true that he's given them incentives with American, to giving Turkey planes, Qatar, etc. But if he thinks that that's a long-lasting peace, he's got another thing coming, because you can't just erase somebody's jihadist and Islamist ideology through that. But there's definitely hope for, in the near future, calling Hamas to task, etc. And perhaps some countries will join the Abraham Accords. But let me just remind President Trump that Qatar, with which he's so enamored these days, is responsible for all the woke plus jihadi mentality across American universities.
Yes.
It's Qatar funding that.
A lot of money. They've injected a lot of money into American universities. And Qatar is also the place that gives safe harbor to the worst terrorists on the planet. I don't understand. I mean, is Qatar just going to suddenly change what it's been doing? I don't think so.
Well, you might say, okay, because President Trump said, hey, guys, kick Hamas out of Doha or something, and then I'll make it worth your while. You could say, okay, fine. But I'm talking about the way they've infiltrated the West, and specifically the United States. And so, it's one thing you say, they're joining the Abraham Accords. Why? While they're destroying your country? I mean, President Trump did a wonderful thing. He said no federal funding to Harvard and other universities for the disgusting stuff that goes on those campuses, right? But on the other hand, he's praising Qatar, and Qatar is responsible for funding and being behind those protests and et cetera. So there's,
I'll say this in defense a little bit, and I'm going to defend him because I like the guy. I know that you like him too. But he also talks about how great Putin is. He doesn't really mean it. He talks about how great President Xi is. He doesn't really mean it. I think he's buttering them up and then going to make them do what he wants. He's going to try to. Now, they might not do what he wants, and I think that your skepticism is absolutely warranted, without a doubt. But I think that he says these things to build people up before he says, but you've got to do this for me. And I hope that that's the way that it works out. I don't think he's underestimating them because he saw what happened in Afghanistan. He sees what Putin's doing in Ukraine, and he sees what Hamas did to you guys. So I think that he's saying really flowery, nice things about them to make them, to build them up a little bit before he tells them, but I'm your dad. I'm the boss of you. I hope that's what's happening, Ruthie. I give him the benefit of the doubt, if that makes sense.
I think you're right. And by the way, I always give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he's incredible. And also, he understands, as somebody who likes his own ego stroked, he understands, he seems to understand that these dictator type leader, authoritarian, I'm not going to give them a title, whatever.
Right.
Non-democratic nations with a ruler and a king, okay? He understands that that's also what he's got to do with them. You're absolutely right. While also asserting his authority.
Right.
Yes. You know, so yes,
you better do what I said. Like you showed the Taliban guy his home in a picture from a satellite. I mean, hey, he's a great leader, very strong man, but I will blow your house up. So I hope a lot of that's happening behind the scenes. Ruthie, God bless you. I hope that there is peace in Israel for the foreseeable future and beyond. I'm a trust but verify guy too. I saw Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin and Jimmy Carter shake hands, and then Sadat was dead by his own people, you know, shortly thereafter. So we'll see what happens, but I really do pray we get some semblance of peace for the time being into the foreseeable future. I'll give you the last word because you're sitting there and you've been dealing with it.
Okay, so I would just like to say, as usual, and you and I have talked about this for the past 2 years, I would like to say replace the word peace right now with the word victory. That's
yes.
all.
Okay. Well, it was an Israeli victory, without a doubt. It is Ruthie Blum. Go check her out on JNS TV. I think it's jns.org, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Ruthie, get some sleep. You're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Always great to be here.
We'll talk very soon. We're back after this. Stay right here.